The metallic floor felt cold beneath Captain Li Wujin's boots as he stumbled forward, pushed by the invisible force field that had dragged him from his cell. The arena stretched out before him like a gladiator's nightmare, a massive circular chamber with towering walls that disappeared into darkness above. Somewhere up there, behind reinforced viewing panels, alien spectators gathered to watch what they believed would be his final moments. The Galactic Tribunal's verdict still echoed in his mind: death by Drakari. The words had sent ripples of excitement through the assembled alien judges, their various tentacles, claws, and appendages clicking with anticipation. For 300 years, no species had survived the trial of flames. The arena floor was supposedly littered with the bones of those who had failed to prove their worth to the galaxy's ruling council. Wu Jin adjusted his torn Earth Defense Force uniform and wiped blood from his split lip. The journey here had been rough. 3 weeks aboard an alien prison transport, crammed into a cell barely large enough for his human frame. His captors, a species of insectoid beings called the Hegemony Guards, had taken particular pleasure in reminding him that humans were considered nothing more than violent primitives by galactic standards. "Your kind shoots first and asks questions later," their commander had clicked through his translator device. Very entertaining, but ultimately expendable. Now, standing alone in this technological coliseum, Wu Jin felt the weight of representing not just himself, but all of humanity. Earth's first contact with alien civilization had gone spectacularly wrong when a hegemony scout ship had been accidentally fired upon by a nervous patrol pilot. Instead of accepting it as a misunderstanding, the aliens had declared humans too dangerous and unpredictable for galactic society. The arena itself was an engineering marvel that spoke to advanced alien technology. Multiple levels of platforms jutted out from the walls at different heights, connected by narrow bridges and ramps. Some platforms glowed with an eerie blue light, while others remained shrouded in shadow. Steam vents hissed randomly from the floor, and Wu Jin could see scorch marks on the metal surfaces, evidence of the fire-breathing creatures he was about to face. A deep rumbling sound echoed through the chamber, followed by the mechanical grinding of heavy doors opening. 3 separate chambers around the arena's perimeter began to iris open like massive eyes, and from their dark depths came sounds that made Wu Jin's military training kick into high alert. Heavy breathing, the scrape of claws on metal, the distinctive whoosh of superheated air being expelled from massive lungs. The first Drakari emerged from the shadows, like something out of Earth's ancient myths. Its scales weren't just black, they seemed to absorb light itself, creating an almost liquid darkness across its hide. The creature stood nearly 4 meters tall at the shoulder and stretched at least 8 meters from snout to tail. Muscles rippled beneath its armored exterior as it moved with surprising grace for something so massive. But it was the intelligence in those golden eyes that made Wu Jin's breath catch. This wasn't some mindless predator. The way the dragon studied him, tilting its enormous head and flaring its nostrils to catch his scent, spoke of a creature that could think, plan, and strategize. The second dragon appeared from another chamber, slightly smaller but with more pronounced spinal ridges and what looked like battle scars across its flanks. It moved differently than the first, more aggressive, head held lower, tail lashing with barely contained energy. This one was a fighter, Wu Jin realized, probably the most dangerous of the 3 in direct combat. The third dragon was the most unsettling. Sleeker than the others, with scales that seemed to shift color in the arena's artificial lighting, it moved with the fluid grace of a predator that relied on speed and cunning rather than brute force. Its eyes never left Wu Jin as it circled, to flank him, demonstrating pack-hunting instincts that sent alarm bells ringing in his head. Above them, the alien spectators pressed against their viewing windows. Wu Jin could make out dozens of different species, crystalline beings that reflected the arena's lights, gas-form entities contained in environmental suits, massive slug-like creatures with multiple eye stalks, and others so bizarre he couldn't begin to categorize them. All united in their certainty that they were about to witness another primitive species meet its end. The largest dragon, clearly the alpha of the group, stepped forward onto the main arena floor. Each footstep rang like a hammer blow against an anvil. Smoke curled from its nostrils in lazy spirals, and the temperature in the arena began to rise noticeably. The creature's mouth opened slightly, revealing rows of teeth longer than Wu Jin's forearm, and a throat that glowed with the promise of incineration. Wu Jin slowly rolled his shoulders, working out the tension from weeks of confinement. His Korean grandfather had always told him that a man's character was revealed not in moments of comfort, but when facing impossible odds. Right now, with 3 apex predators sizing him up like their next meal and an entire galactic civilization. Convinced of his species' inferiority, those words had never felt more relevant. "Well," he muttered, settling into a combat stance his instructors would have recognized, "let's see what you've got." The largest dragon took another step forward, and the real test began. The first night in the arena, Wu Jin didn't sleep. He couldn't afford to. The 3 dragons had retreated to different corners after their initial assessment, but their glowing eyes never stopped tracking his movements. From his perch on a middle-level platform, he watched them settle into what appeared to be a routine, the Alpha claiming the largest elevated section, the scarred fighter taking a position near the main floor's center, and the sleek one disappearing into the shadows between support pillars. By dawn, when artificial lighting gradually brightened the arena, Wu Jin had learned something crucial. These weren't mindless beasts driven by simple hunger. They had a social structure, communication patterns, and what looked suspiciously like respect for territory and hierarchy. The observation came during the morning feeding cycle. Mechanical dispensers emerged from the walls with a sharp pneumatic hiss, releasing chunks of what appeared to be synthesized meat onto designated platforms. Wu Jin's empty stomach cramped at the sight, but he forced himself to remain still and watch. The dragons moved with practiced precision. The Alpha descended first, its massive form moving with deliberate authority. It selected the choicest portions while the other 2 waited at a respectful distance. Only after the Alpha had eaten its fill did the scarred fighter approach, followed, finally, by the sleek one. No fighting, no scrambling, just an orderly system based on understood rank. Wu Jin filed this information away and continued his patient observation. The alien spectators above were becoming restless. Through the viewing panels, he could see them gesticulating with whatever appendages they possessed, clearly expecting more action. The hegemony guards who had captured him were probably taking bets on how long the human would last. 3 days into his imprisonment, the arena's puzzle system activated for the first time. A section of the floor began glowing with geometric patterns, accompanied by a musical tone that seemed to resonate through the metal structure. The dragons showed immediate interest, but also wariness. They had clearly encountered this before. Wu Jin watched as colored panels emerged from the floor in a complex sequence. The pattern was mathematical, a progression based on prime numbers, something his engineering background allowed him to recognize quickly. While the dragons circled the glowing section uncertainly, he dropped down from his platform and began touching the panels in the correct order. The sequence completed with a satisfying chime and a hidden compartment open to reveal additional food portions. But instead of grabbing them immediately, Wu Jin stepped back and watched the dragon's reaction. Their golden eyes tracked between him and the reward, clearly processing what had just happened. The Alpha approached first, as expected, but paused, to look directly at Wu Jin. For a moment that stretched into eternity, human and dragon regarded each other across an impossible gulf of evolution and circumstance. Then the Alpha took its portion and moved away, leaving enough for the others. This became their routine. Each time the puzzle activated, sometimes mathematical sequences, other times requiring physical manipulation of arena mechanisms, Wu Jin would solve it first, then step aside for the dragons to claim their rewards according to their established hierarchy. He took only what remained, usually the smallest portions, but it was enough to keep him alive. The aliens watching from above were growing increasingly agitated. Their viewing sessions became longer, with more officials joining each day. Wu Jin could hear the electronic chittering of their translated conversations echoing through the arena's sound system. Words like anomalous behavior and unprecedented survival duration filtered down to him. On the 7th day, everything changed. Wu Jin was making his way across one of the narrow bridges connecting upper platforms when he heard the Alphas approach. The massive creature had climbed the support structure with surprising agility, its claws finding purchase on surfaces that looked impossibly smooth. Now it stood at the opposite end of the bridge, effectively blocking his path. The bridge itself was barely 3 meters wide and perhaps 15 meters long, suspended 20 meters above the arena floor. Below, the other 2 dragons had positioned themselves to watch, their necks craned upward with what looked like anticipation. This was it, the moment the aliens had been waiting for. The Alpha began moving forward, each step causing the bridge to vibrate under its massive weight. Its golden eyes were locked on Wu Jin's, and smoke began curling from its nostrils in thicker streams. The temperature around them rose noticeably. Every instinct screamed at Wu Jin to run, to find another route, to do anything except stand his ground against an apex predator that could incinerate him with a single breath. But running would mark him as prey in their eyes, and prey didn't last long in situations like this. Instead, he planted his feet and waited. The Alpha picked up speed, its massive form thundering across the bridge. At the last possible moment, when Wu Jin could feel the heat radiating from the creature's mouth and see the glow building in its throat, he moved. Not backward in retreat, not to the side in panic, but with the fluid precision of someone who had calculated angles and momentum, with military precision. He sidestepped smoothly, his body moving just enough to let the dragon's bulk pass by without contact. The creature's momentum carried it past him, and for a brief moment they stood side by side on the narrow bridge. The Alpha could have easily adjusted its course, could have used its tail or claws to strike. Instead, it continued forward to the platform Wu Jin had been heading toward, then turned to face him. The silence in the arena was absolute. Even the ambient humming of the facility's systems seemed to pause. Then the Alpha tilted its massive head, studying Wu Jin with what could only be described as curiosity, mixed with something that looked suspiciously like approval. The gesture was so unmistakably respectful that even the watching aliens fell silent. Below them, the other dragons made soft rumbling sounds that might have been approval or surprise. Above, the alien spectators pressed closer to their viewing panels, their various forms of communication creating a buzz of confusion and disbelief. Wu Jin remained perfectly still, meeting the Alpha's gaze steadily. In that moment, he understood that something fundamental had shifted in the arena's dynamics. He was no longer just surviving. He was communicating. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but when it did, it defied everything the Galactic Tribunal thought they knew about interspecies dynamics. By the 10th day, security cameras throughout the arena complex were recording footage that would later be studied by xenobiologists across 17 different star systems. Wu Jin had started each morning the same way, solving the arena's puzzle. Sequences to unlock food dispensers, then stepping back to let the dragons feed according to their hierarchy. But something had evolved in those daily interactions. The Alpha, which he had privately begun calling Big Gold due to its distinctive eye color, had started waiting for him to approach before beginning to eat. It was a subtle shift, but one that sent ripples through the Dragon Pack's social structure. The scarred fighter, who moved with the confident aggression of a veteran warrior, began positioning itself closer to Wu Jin during feeding times. The sleek shadow dragon, the one that had initially seemed most dangerous due to its hunting instincts, started following him at a distance as he moved through the arena's various levels. The breakthrough came during what the arena's automated systems called Environmental Challenge Theta 7. Wu Jin had been examining the peculiar scratch marks on one of the lower platforms when alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lighting bathed everything in pulsing red as mechanical systems throughout the arena began activating in sequence. The floor sections started moving, rotating and shifting to create new configurations. Walls slid out from hidden recesses, breaking up the familiar layout into a maze of passages and dead ends. Steam vents opened randomly, filling sections with scalding vapor, while others released clouds of what appeared to be artificial fog designed to obscure vision. Through it, "Alta," a computerized voice announced in multiple alien languages what was clearly a countdown. Wu Jin didn't need translation to understand that some kind of test was about to begin. The dragons reacted with immediate agitation. Big Gold roared its displeasure at the changing environment, while the scarred fighter began pacing in tight circles. But it was the Shadow Dragon's behavior that caught Wu Jin's attention. It had pressed itself against a wall section, clearly seeking shelter from whatever was coming. When the countdown reached 0, the arena erupted into chaos. Massive mechanical arms emerged from concealed panels in the ceiling, each one equipped with different tools. Some sparked with electrical energy, others glowed with intense heat, and several more moved with the precise motions of industrial cutting equipment. They swept through the arena in coordinated patterns, creating a deadly obstacle course that shifted and changed every few seconds. The dragons scattered, using their natural agility to avoid the mechanical threats. But Wu Jin could see they were reacting instinctively, without coordination. Big Gold's size made it difficult to navigate the narrow passages created by the moving walls. The scarred fighter's aggressive nature led it to attack one of the mechanical arms directly, earning a painful shock that sent it reeling. The Shadow Dragon's preference for stealth was useless when the entire arena had become an active threat zone. This was where Wu Jin's military training proved invaluable. He had spent years learning to read tactical situations, to identify patterns in chaos, and to coordinate team movements under pressure. The arena's challenge system was sophisticated, but it followed predictable algorithms. "Big Gold," he shouted, his voice cutting through the mechanical noise. The Alpha Dragon's head snapped toward him immediately. Wu Jin pointed toward a section where two mechanical arms had created a temporary safe zone through their synchronized movements. "There, wait for the gap!" The dragon seemed to understand his urgency, if not his words. It moved toward the indicated position just as Wu Jin had predicted the safe window would open. The massive creature squeezed through with seconds to spare. Emboldened by this success, Wu Jin began coordinating all three dragons' movements. He guided the scarred fighter away from the electrical hazards it kept trying to attack, directing it instead toward areas where its aggressive nature could be used to trigger mechanical switches that opened new pathways. The Shadow Dragon he sent through narrow passages that its sleek form could navigate easily, allowing it to scout ahead and signal back about changing conditions. What amazed the watching aliens wasn't just that the human was surviving the arena's deadliest challenge, Hamoud. It was that he was actively protecting and coordinating creatures that should have been his executioners. The most dramatic moment came when a shifting wall section caught the Shadow Dragon's left wing, pinning it in place as one of the mechanical arms swept toward its position. Without hesitation, Wu Jin sprinted across moving floor panels, dodging two separate cutting beams to reach the trapped dragon. The creature could have easily incinerated him as he approached. Instead, it held perfectly still as he examined the situation. The wing wasn't broken, but it was caught in a gap that was slowly closing as the wall section continued its programmed movement. Working quickly, Wu Jin tore strips from his already tattered uniform and created a makeshift harness around his own torso. He positioned himself to take the dragon's weight, then carefully guided its wing free just as the wall sealed shut. The dragon stumbled, but remained upright, favoring the injured limb slightly. Without medical supplies, Wu Jin improvised. He used more fabric from his uniform to create a supportive wrap around the dragon's wing joint, the kind of field dressing he had learned during combat medical training. The Shadow Dragon submitted to this treatment with remarkable patience, its golden eyes never leaving his face. When the environmental challenge finally ended and the arena returned to its standard configuration, something fundamental had changed. The three dragons now moved as a coordinated unit with Wu Jin at the center of their formation. Big Gold took point as the primary protector. The scarred fighter covered their flanks, and the Shadow Dragon served as their scout and early warning system. Above them, in the observation chambers, emergency meetings were being called across multiple star systems. Admiral Thexkar of the Tribunal's Enforcement Division found himself staring at security footage that challenged everything he thought. He knew about species hierarchy and pack dynamics. Sir, his aide, a nervous crystalline being whose form flickered with distress, approached hesitantly. "The Xenobiology Department is requesting additional observation time. They say what we're seeing is unprecedented." Thexkar's multiple eye stalks focused on the screens, showing Wu Jin moving through the arena with his unlikely companions. "Unprecedented doesn't begin to cover it," he rumbled through his translator. "In 3 centuries of trials, no species has ever turned the Drakari into cooperative allies. Most barely survive the first encounter." The aide's crystalline structure pulsed with uncertainty. "Should we modify the trial parameters? Introduce additional challenges?" The Admiral was quiet for a long moment, watching as the human carefully checked each dragon for injuries sustained during the mechanical assault. "No," he said finally. "I want to see how far this anomaly can go. Contact the High Council. Tell them we may need to reconsider our assessment of this species." Below, Wu Jin had no idea that his actions were reshaping galactic policy. He was focused on simpler concerns, keeping his new pack healthy, safe, and working together. In doing so, he was proving that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their aggression, but their ability to build bridges across impossible divides. The Emergency Council session aboard the Tribunal's flagship, Eternal Judgment, was unlike anything in the organization's 3,000-year history. Holographic displays flickered throughout the massive command chamber as representatives from 47 different species materialized in their designated spaces. The air hummed with tension as translation matrices worked overtime to handle the cacophony of alien languages filling the room. Admiral Kessatar stood at the center of it all, his forearms gesticulating wildly as he addressed the assembled delegates. His blue-scaled face showed signs of stress that his species rarely displayed in public, and his usually pristine military uniform was wrinkled from hours of pacing. "Honored delegates," he began, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into standard galactic common, "what you are about to see defies every principle we have established regarding primitive species integration. The human designated as Test Subject 7739 has been in the arena for 18 standard cycles. Not only has he survived, but he has achieved something we believed impossible." The massive central display activated, showing live feeds from multiple angles within the arena. There, moving with casual confidence across the metal platforms, was Captain Li Wu Jin. But he wasn't alone. 3 Drakari flanked him in a protective formation that spoke of absolute trust and coordination. Gasps, clicks, and various sounds of disbelief rippled through the assembly. Councillor Vexthra, a crystalline being whose body sparkled with agitation, stepped forward. "This must be some form of technological manipulation. No organic being can simply command Drakari loyalty." "That's what we thought," Kessatar replied grimly. "But we've run every scan possible. No neural implants, no chemical manipulators, no technological assistance of any kind. The human is doing this through behavioral adaptation alone." On the screens, they watched as Wu Jin solved another puzzle sequence with practiced ease. Instead of claiming the food reward immediately, he stepped back and gestured for Big Gold to approach. The massive dragon acknowledged him, with what could only be described as a respectful nod before taking its portion. Supreme Chancellor Mordek, whose gas-form body swirled with patterns of deep concern, spoke through his environmental suits, speakers. "Show them the incident from Cycle 15. Kestar's expression darkened as he activated a different recording. "This is when we decided to attempt extraction. Standard protocol calls for automated retrieval systems when a trial subject survives beyond the expected parameters." The footage showed the arena's ceiling panels opening to reveal the mechanical extraction arms, massive robotic appendages designed to safely remove surviving subjects without endangering arena staff. But as the arms descended toward Wu Jin, the dragon's behavior changed instantly. Big Gold released a roar that shook the arena's foundations, positioning itself directly between the mechanical arms and the human. The scarred fighter moved to flank the extraction equipment, smoke billowing from its nostrils in clear threat display. Most remarkably, the shadow dragon used its agility to climb the support structures, placing itself in position to attack. The arms from above, if necessary. "They're protecting him," whispered Councillor Hytrek, whose insectoid form clicked with amazement. "Drakari are solitary apex predators. They don't form protective bonds with other species." The recording continued, showing the extraction arms retreating as the dragons maintained their defensive positions. But it was what happened next that had prompted the emergency session. Wu Jin stepped forward, looking directly into the primary observation camera. His voice carried clearly through the arena's audio systems as he spoke in clear, measured tones. "I know you're watching up there," he said, his words translated instantly into dozens of alien languages. "You wanted to test if humans deserve a place in your galaxy. I think your own dragons have given you the answer." He gestured to his unlikely companions, who remained alert but non-aggressive in their protective stance. "We don't conquer through fear. We lead through understanding. Maybe it's time we talked as equals." The silence that followed in the council chamber was deafening. For long moments, the only sounds were the ambient hums of life support systems and the soft electronic chatter of translation matrices cycling through standby modes. Finally, Elder Zixandra spoke. Her ancient species had been among the first to join the Galactic Tribunal, and her word carried enormous weight. In 12,000 cycles of observation, no species has ever survived the trial of flames beyond 20 cycles. This human has not only survived, but has fundamentally altered the behavioral patterns of our most dangerous predators. "The implications are staggering," added Councillor Vexthra, her crystalline form now pulsing with thoughtful blue light instead of agitated. "Red? If humans can establish this level of cooperation with Drakari, what other assumptions about their species might be incorrect?" Admiral Kessitar activated additional displays showing Earth's solar system and the small human fleet that had been quarantined there after the first contact incident. Their technology is primitive by our standards, but their adaptability appears to be off the charts. They've only had spaceflight for a few of their centuries, yet they've already begun developing interstellar capabilities. "What about their aggressive tendencies?" demanded Councillor Thrackmore, whose warrior species had initially supported the human extermination proposal. "The incident that brought this human to trial involved unprovoked attack on our scout vessels." Kessitar pulled up the incident reports. "We've reviewed that engagement extensively. Their patrol pilot was responding to what he perceived as a threat to civilian populations. When he realized his error, he immediately attempted to render aid to our damaged vessel. The aggression appears to have been defensive rather than predatory." On the main display, they watched as Wu Jin tended to a minor injury on the shadow, Dragon's foreleg, using strips from his own uniform to create a fresh bandage. The dragon submitted to his care with complete trust, even nuzzling his shoulder in what appeared to be gratitude. Supreme Chancellor Mordek's gaseous form swirled in patterns that indicated deep contemplation. "The question before us is no longer whether this human can survive our trial. The question is whether we can afford to ignore what his survival means." Elder Zixandra extended one of her delicate limbs toward the display controls. "Show me their homeworld's communication frequencies. If we're going to talk as equals, as the human suggested, then we should probably start by talking to someone with authority to speak for their species." "You're suggesting we negotiate?" Councillor Thrackmore's battle-scarred carapace clicked with disbelief. "With a species we designated as dangerous? I'm suggesting," Zixandra replied calmly, "that any species capable of turning our apex predators into loyal companions might have qualities we've overlooked. Perhaps it's time to reconsider our initial assessment." Admiral Kessitar looked around the chamber at the assembled delegates. For the first time in his military career, he was about to recommend that the tribunal reverse a species termination order. The implications would reshape their entire approach to first contact protocols. "Very well," he said finally. "I'm authorizing immediate diplomatic contact with Earth's governing bodies. The human will remain in protective custody until we can arrange proper negotiations." On the screen, Wu Jin was teaching the dragons a new coordination drill, using hand signals to direct their movements around the arena. The sight of interspecies cooperation on such a fundamental level continued to astound the watching aliens. Galaxy was about to discover that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their aggression. It was their ability to find common ground with anyone, even fire-breathing dragons. The massive doors of the arena opened with a deep mechanical rumble that echoed throughout the tribunal's diplomatic complex. But instead of the usual cleanup crews coming to collect another failed species remains, Something unprecedented emerged from the metallic depths. Captain Li Wujin stepped into the corridor first, his torn Earth Defense Force uniform somehow still carrying an air of military dignity despite weeks of improvised repairs. Behind him, moving with the fluid grace of apex predators who had chosen their path, came 3 Drakari. Big Gold's massive form filled much of the doorway. The scarred fighter prowled with controlled energy, and the shadow dragon moved like liquid darkness made solid. The assembled alien delegates who had gathered to witness this historic moment pressed back instinctively. Even knowing intellectually that these dragons were now allies, millions of years of evolutionary programming screamed warnings about creatures that could incinerate them with a breath. Admiral Kessitar stepped forward, his forearms spread in what his species considered a gesture of peaceful greeting. "Captain Wujin," he said through his translator, "on behalf of the Galactic Tribunal, I formally apologize for the grave error in judgment that led to your current circumstances." Wujin paused, one hand resting gently on Big Gold's flank. The dragon's golden eyes surveyed the assembled aliens with intelligent assessment, but showed no signs of aggression. "Admiral," he replied, his voice carrying the calm authority that had helped him survive impossible odds, "I appreciate the apology, but I think we have more important things to discuss than past mistakes." The walk through the Tribunal's flagship was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Crew members of dozens of different species lined the corridors, some hanging from the ceiling due to their unique physiology, others floating in specialized atmospheric containers. All watched in fascination as the human-dragon group moved past. With coordinated precision, the dragons respond to his emotional state, reported Dr. Ixilana, the Tribunal's chief xenobiologist, to her colleagues via neural link. "When he's calm, they're calm. When he showed slight tension passing the security checkpoints, they moved into protective formation without any visible signal from him." The main conference chamber had been hastily reconfigured to accommodate both diplomatic protocol and the practical reality of hosting 3 massive predators. The usual circular arrangement of delegate positions had been expanded, with reinforced flooring installed to handle Drakari weight and specialized air circulation to manage the heat they generated. Elder Zix Andra, despite her advanced age, moved with graceful dignity as she approached Wujin. "Captain, what you have accomplished challenges everything we thought we knew about interspecies relations. We would be honored to learn from your experience." Wujin gestured for his companions to settle into the positions they had practiced during their final days in the arena. The dragons arranged themselves in a loose semicircle around his designated speaking area, close enough to respond to threats, but far enough to avoid intimidating the smaller alien delegates. "The first thing you need to understand," Wujin began, addressing the assembled representatives, "is that respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn through consistent actions over time." As if responding to a cue, Big Gold shifted slightly, positioning itself so that its massive bulk provided a backdrop of controlled power behind the human speaker. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone present. Supreme Chancellor Mordek's gaseous form swirled with patterns indicating deep attention. "How did you know that cooperation was possible?" Every previous trial subject attempted either flight or aggressive confrontation. "Because I watched first," Wujin replied. "In military training, we learn that understanding your environment is the key to survival. These dragons aren't mindless predators. They're intelligent beings with their own social structures and communication methods. I had to learn their language before I could become part of their world." The shadow dragon, as if recognizing its cue, demonstrated one of the subtle head movements that Wujin had identified as a positive acknowledgement. Several alien delegates leaned forward, their various sensory organs focusing intently on this display of interspecies communication. Councillor Vexthra's crystalline form pulsed with curiosity. "But the risk. One mistake could have resulted in immediate termination." "Every worthwhile relationship involves risk," Wujin answered. "The difference is whether you're willing to invest in understanding or just react out of fear." Admiral Kester activated a holographic display showing Earth's solar system. "Captain, your government has been informed of these proceedings. They've authorized you to speak on humanity's behalf regarding potential integration into galactic society." The Moment felt surreal to Wu Jin. Weeks ago, he had been a simple patrol captain conducting routine security sweeps around Earth's outer colonies. Now he was somehow representing his entire species in negotiations that would determine humanity's future among the stars. What we're offering, Elder Zixandra continued, is full membership in the Galactic Tribunal, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails: trade agreements, technological exchange, territorial recognition, and protection under galactic law. And in exchange, Wu Jin asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. We want to understand how you accomplished what you did, admitted Dr. Ixalana. Your methods could revolutionize how we approach first contact with newly discovered species. No more trials by combat, instead trials by cooperation. The scarred fighter dragon chose that moment to approach Wu Jin directly, its massive head lowering to allow him to check a healing wound on its neck. The gesture of trust and care, performed before dozens of alien witnesses, spoke louder than any diplomatic speech could have. I accept on behalf of humanity, Wu Jin said, his hand still resting on the dragon's scales. But with one condition. The alien delegates waited with various expressions of curiosity and concern. These three don't go back to being arena predators. They've become something new, ambassadors, partners, friends. Whatever role I take in this new arrangement, they remain with me. Big Gold rumbled its approval, a sound that vibrated through the ship's hull and caused several nervous alien delegates to grip their support structures more tightly. Elder Zixandra's ancient features curved in what might have been a smile. Captain, I think you'll find that the galaxy has room for all kinds of new partnerships. 6 months later, the sight of Captain Li Wu Jin and his dragon companions had become familiar throughout the known galaxy. They traveled from system to system, teaching other species the techniques that had transformed mortal enemies into loyal allies. The former arena that had been designed for death became a training center for interspecies cooperation. Humanity took its place among the galactic community not as conquerors or supplicants, but as teachers and bridge builders. And at the center of it all was a simple truth that Wu Jin had learned in the depths of an alien arena, that the strongest bonds are forged not through dominance, but through understanding, patience, and the willingness to see potential allies. Where others saw only threats, the dragons had taught him that survival wasn't about being the strongest predator in the arena. It was about building a pack strong enough to face any challenge together. The galaxy would never be the same. They say, End.